everyone. Welcome once again to another edition of the Burning Platform. With me again is Mr. Vinnie Mirchandani. We're continuing our series on impact of the pandemic on different functional leaders. This case, we'll be talking about the Chief HR Officer, the CHRO. And along those lines, we're going to be talking about a number of the different kinds of changes that have impacted them, but we won't stay just focused on what has happened. We will be focusing on what will need to happen going forward. So with that, as a setup, Vinny, what are your first thoughts? What's hit the Chief HR's desk lately?
You know, Brian, we've talked about HR being strategic for how long? Throughout our careers. I think the pandemic certainly gave them a chance to, if not become strategic, certainly essential. My God, what HR was expected to do, everything from health and safety to furloughs to mass hiring just the pressures on HR have just been amazing. Probably impacted that function more than any other single function in the enterprise.
Well, let's pick up on your point. And it was something that's gone through like whipsaws. They've had to do it could be mass layoffs and across the board pay decreases or benefit reductions one day, but then they're starting to do mass hirings all over again. There have been, and they've had to undo things. They've had to be responsive to a litany of changing regulations, some of which are even conflicting about, like, can we reopen or not? Well, you got to check with local, county, state, and federal kind of guidance on this stuff, and it hasn't been clear. And I have
Brian,
I empathize.
Don't forget, they also have had to deal with a lot of diversity issues, at least in the U.S. It's been
yes.
Yeah.
So you add to that, and then we have the work from home issues. You like to call it hygiene, but all these safety and other kind of protocols with people come back to work. And we can go and. I mean, you know, I think the bottom line here is it's been a tough time to be a chief HR officer in a lot of companies because the HR function has had to respond in such a great amount to all these kind of changes. And that's even before you get into things where they're helping other parts of the organization, like helping finance with like PPP loan generation and loan forgiveness activities. So yeah, let's just stipulate right now that if you're a chief HR officer and your workload didn't dramatically increase this year, you're one of the lucky ones, I guess, is the way I would describe it. So looking at that, what's coming around the corner? What are the things that chief HR officers should be loading up on their agenda that they're going to solve now that some of the initial firefighting's kind of out of the way and the stabilization is kind of there? What is it that chief HR officers should be pushing on?
I would say at least a couple of things. One is I'm seeing a lot of interest in automation. You know, people thinking of bringing manufacturing back, which means, and they don't want to hire people here to do that. They're looking at a next generation, or people looking at robotic warehouses, people looking at robotic process automation in a number of white collar functions. So I don't see, HR has traditionally not led automation. It's been operational folks, plant managers, et cetera, who have done that. I think HR will need to step up this time. Another area is, you know, the economy recovery scenarios have been all over the place. You know, you hear people talking about U recovery, V recovery, K recovery, so on. It impacts dramatically what companies are doing with their people needs. And so HR will need to get used to a lot more continuous planning, just like the CFO is.
I'm going to go a little bit different tact, and I'm going to say that HR's had to be involved in a lot of capabilities lately, or projects where they've tried to keep the company functioning. They didn't want it to slip into a dysfunctional state. You've done a lot of that now. Now you have to focus on how do we get these processes to be extraordinarily process excellent. And I think the bar has shifted, where you used to think you might have been first quartile on how you did a particular function. Now you may find out you've really slipped a lot, because some of the better companies are finding out that they can use automation to automate the daylights out of things. They've got self-service functionality for everybody now. And we go down the list. What's really good is they're using advanced technologies, whether it's like chat bots to take care of all the routine inquiries coming into HR. They're trying, the best HR organizations are trying to focus on real problematic areas like engagement, and like you were talking about, inclusivity and diversity and those kind of things. They're trying to focus on those matters more so and less on the transaction processing. And the end result should be that a chief HR officer is creating a work environment where people want to stay with the company years longer than they otherwise would have. And that has implications on all the things we just talked about, but also about training and career development in an ever more dynamic and chaotic work world, where production is shifting around from country to country, and even how you make things is going to change. That has implications on the kind of skills development, and everything else everyone's going to need, including skills development in the HR function itself. So I think we've got to, as we go from staying away from dysfunctional to functional to process excellent, to how do we position HR as a key driver in transforming our company and the industry that we operate in. There's a progression of these kind of changes that have to happen.
I think, Brian, I would say we're learning a lot from people-intensive businesses. It could be outsourcing, it could be customer service centric businesses. I mean, the whole experience of recruiting people remotely, onboarding them remotely, training them remotely, learning a lot. I mean, there's a whole new skill set that people have gained in the last few months. And, you know, that journey hasn't ended. They're still learning how to manage people remotely, social isolation issues, a whole bunch of science that's coming out of this. It's a great time to learn a lot.
So I'm going to throw one bucket of cold water, though, on all of this. That is, I think the chief HR officer has to be very careful going forward. There are so many new machine learning and algorithmic based capabilities coming into the HR space, tools that will analyze like our facial expressions, even on the Zoom call, to figure out, are we telling the truth or not, or how engaged we are, et cetera, et cetera. And are we engaging in, you know, if I roll my eyes up and I'm looking up above, that says I'm using the higher reasoning parts of my brain. You got to think about, you got to be careful, because if you overly rely on some of these, the science on some of these new tools isn't as fully baked out as you like. So I think and it may actually be detrimental to your company and expose you to some litigation if you don't really fully understand this. So yes, I want to encourage people to embrace the new technology, but on the other hand, and I'm arguing like an economist here, but on the other hand, you need to be careful about which ones you do get, because they could have economic and other consequences to the company if they end up being misused, whether intentionally or not.
Brian, on the positive side, because HR has become so essential, I've seen a whole generation of new vendors step in, right? So Salesforce launched Work.com. ServiceNow has Safe Workplace. IBM's working with Workday on, you know, new protocols for reopening and so on. So there's a lot of new opportunities. You know, you look at the shop floor distancing technologies. This pandemic has forced us to think about work. You know, generally, the future of work has become the present of work. It's very different than what we had planned on.
I don't know that it made us think differently. I just think it accelerated what would have maybe dragged on for a decade or decade and a half. Now people have had to deal with that in about a year. And again, I would just be cautious that you act very smartly and with a very high sense of premeditation when you pick and choose what you're going to use going forward. So Vinnie, look, you know, we've talked a little bit about the past, kind of where things are at and where they're going. What's the key bit of counsel that you would give chief HR officers out there right now?
I would say grab this attention you're getting. You're not quite strategic, but you're essential. Take advantage of it. Don't go back to your traditional behavior of tactical, let me just find a vendor that will do stuff for me. This is your opportunity to shine. This is your opportunity to really step out.
And I guess mine is I'm going to say, get out of the tech discussion that we've been in for the last few minutes. And I really want to encourage every single chief HR officer out there to get out of the office, get out there and meet your rank and file people all over the planet. Go to a coffee shop and wear your mask and everything else, but actually meet them, because you're not going to really know what's going on through a survey or a quick pulse check until you actually rub shoulders, metaphorically speaking, with these folks to find out what's really going on. I think you're going to find an incredible diversity of both inspiring things people are doing, as well as some concerning things that are troubling them and how they're personally trying to navigate this environment on their own. And I think the more enlightened, savvy, and knowledgeable that a chief HR officer is about the workforce in total, I think the better off they're going to be in picking these new technologies going forward.
I would say, Brian, another reason to do that, go out and meet management by walking around, is empathy. I mean, one of the really nice things in the last few months in conversations with CEOs has been how empathetic they are about fellow humans, right? And so the empathy will come out when you go out and personally meet with them or have a one-on-one conversation. It doesn't have to be face-to-face, it could be on Zoom. But yeah, it's very important that they mingle with the workforce.
Well, I'm going to be empathetic right now and say that I think folks, our chief HR officers have been watching this, are tired of listening to the two of us talk now. So why don't we go ahead and put a wrap on it. Folks, thanks very much for listening in once again to The Burning Platform. And on behalf of Vinnie and I, we'll check you on one of the next episodes that we do very soon. Thank you.